Welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be joined by Jenny Phillips. Now, I've known Jenny for I think about 3 years. I met her at a public health conference in the audience with my good friend Giancarlo Caldesi, and we hit it off from day one. Jenny's got a very similar mindset to me, but the thing she knows about that I don't know about is what sugar does to our bodies. So I'm an expert of what happens to sugar in our mouths, but as soon as we swallow it, I really haven't got that much of a clue. So Jenny and I hit it off from day one, and she is very passionate about what she does. She's now actually the nutritionist for my wife as well, so she's helped the whole family's nutrition as well, indirectly. And she's the author of 4 books now. So her first one was Eat to Outsmart Cancer. I'm sure she'll be talking to you about that as well. But then there's 2 books by Katie and Giancarlo Caldesi, both about reversing your diabetes. And then she's also written with me Kick Sugar, which some of you have already bought already. So without further ado, the other thing I forgot to tell you actually is she is also a yoga instructor, another passion of mine. She does virtual online courses as well. So without any further ado, I just want to say hello, Jenny, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, James. It's lovely to see you in these very unusual times. Yes. It's great we can connect.
Yes, virtually. Yes, definitely. So thank you for joining us. And it's great to see the books in the background. We've had so many people asking questions about nutrition, and there's so much misinformation out there, and companies selling things. And when we go to supermarkets, trying to understand the labels. Most of us know that sugar is bad for us, but they don't know where it hides, how to get off sugar. And I just wanted to go through some questions that some of our readers have come in and see if you can help with. So maybe we can start a little bit about your journey with sugar and how you got to help write the book.
Sure. So my sort of introduction into a complete revolution in my food was I got diagnosed with cancer, hence the first book, and that's 15 years ago now. So, and what I really like to celebrate is my health is way better now, my fitness is way better now than it was when I was 15 years younger. So I kind of really like the concept of reverse aging. I think that's got to be a winner. So out of a very unfortunate situation, I was able to kind of reevaluate things, and although I had fantastic medical treatments, my risks of recurrence were 50%, and they're just frightening odds, you know, if you think about it in that way. And so I really just wanted to see how could I change my my outlook, really. And that took me down the path of looking at nutrition. And incidentally, my first degree was in chemistry, and nutrition is actually just about pure biochemistry. So it felt a really natural fit. And I was able to kind of burrow myself away and learn more. And to be honest, I've never been a really big sugar eater. I'm more of a savoury girl. But what I was doing wrong was eating way too much of the starchy carbs, the breads and the pastas and things that break down to sugar. So I'm now much more low carb. But I think of a first step of improving your health, especially if you do have more of a sweet tooth, then it is getting away from the sugary stuff. And the thing is, it's really pervasive, isn't it? And I know some of the supermarkets have been under a bit of pressure not to make the sweeties so prominent when we're at the checkouts and things. But you know, just wherever you go, if you're looking for, you know, a quick fix in terms of food, then a lot of these sugary foods are just like beacons, aren't they? And I think that's a real challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, one of the big questions is that people don't really understand what is sugar, and the fact that our bodies already make energy, and why do we need sugar? So, I mean, can you give us a little bit of 101 about what is sugar and why is it so bad for our bodies?
Yeah, well, sugar is a type of carbohydrate if you think about the 3 food groups. But sugar itself releases its energy incredibly quickly. And so we kind of associate, if we want a little pick up, we think, oh, bar of chocolate will pick me up. But I think the good news is, James, that people are getting more and more aware of this thing called blood sugar levels, even if if you're not diabetic. And more people are realizing, and I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this are actually on that journey as well, realizing that those kind of quick fixes, they pick you up, but they drop you down again very quickly, because it releases such a high concentration of sugar into your bloodstream at any one time. So if you think, I mean, drinks are actually a major source of sugar for a lot of sugar consumers, particularly children, which is quite frightening. You know, one can of cola will hit your bloodstream with something like 9 teaspoons of sugar. Now, that might not mean an awful lot, but then when you consider that in your bloodstream at any one time, to drive your energy requirements as one of your sources of energy, there is another, then you've only got 1 teaspoon of sugar. I think that then brings some perspective in. You know, you've got a bloodstream with 1 teaspoon of sugar in it, and you whack in 9, and then your energy drops and you have another, and then you have a bar of chocolate, and it just becomes what we call a roller coaster. And I guess what we're describing as well is addictive behavior, because you get that lift, you get that dopamine response, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's all about your brain, and dopamine is your feel-good. It's a neurotransmitter or hormone. And so you get this lift initially, but it's just not sustained. And the addictive qualities mean also that you just keep upping the ante. And that's a real problem for people. Because of course...
One chocolate's not good enough. It's one chocolate gives you the high, and then suddenly you need two, and then suddenly the whole packet's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I was telling a bit of a fib, because I did eat chocolate as well. I always think about mostly my main meals, which are completely different now. But yeah, I can remember, actually, this is really naughty. I can remember having a box of chocolates that I hid in the cupboard and I just ate myself. That's really bad, isn't it?
Do you remember what chocolates
I didn't even share them. I hoarded them and ate them on myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
you feel better now that's out of your system.
Yeah, I mean, I still like dark chocolate. So I tend to buy 85%, and I have a couple of squares most days. I enjoy that, but it doesn't upset your blood sugar levels in the same way, but it's quite a satisfying flavour to me. If you're used to the dairy milk, you might need to wean yourself off a little bit. Yeah,
I try and recommend people to maybe start on 70% and then slowly take yourself up. I'm on 90% now, and actually two chunks of 90 does really well for me, and I like you, I still like my chocolate, but it does the same way, whereas previously I'd have to have almost the same bar to have that feeling, and then I feel awful afterwards. So now I feel great afterwards because I have control over it. One thing we put in the book, I don't know if you remember, we did with Emily, which is the chocolate melting, just having a little bar of chocolate, maybe starting with 70%, putting it on your tongue, and then leaving it there for 30 seconds and then noticing all the different flavors that you have, because most of the time we just gobble it up, don't even know. We just feel the sugar and that's it. Because there's so many different flavors and aromas and textures to chocolate. So definitely take your time and savor it.
And that's a really good point. Isn't there a phrase that it didn't touch the sides?
Yeah.
Yeah, because literally we shovel some of this stuff in, as you say. And I think being mindful about what you eat is a very important point. And I think the other point I would say is sometimes people think if you say change your diet, go more healthy, low sugar, is people think, oh, well, you're no fun, like you're the anti-fun police. It's not that at all, because actually we're eating fantastic foods. You know, I'm not against desserts, you know, in moderation, but make them yourself unless you can really be sure of the quality. You know, if you're in a nice restaurant, that's different. But we are talking about really nice foods. And I think the book's a great showcase of that. It does mean you need to make a little bit more effort. It does. There's no getting away from it. But I think that's where the attitude changes. It's okay, you have to build in time. Fortunately, we've got a bit more time now, haven't we? A lot of us at home, everybody, obviously. But I think you asked me about what would be my top tip, and I'm coming up really, really early in the program here. But one of my top tips would be to fall in love with your kitchen. And if you don't like your kitchen, then think about why you don't like it. And introduce things you do. If you like listening to the radio, gosh, it's no problem. This is bringing a radio in, a laptop if you like YouTube. You know, getting people in there with you. obviously, if you're refitting your kitchen, you can build it around that. And actually, my first refit on a kitchen, I made an L shape and I put the cooker right at the far end of the L. What a load of rubbish that was, because I was with my back to everybody, like far away, and that wasn't enjoyable. So when we refitted, we made the cooking area the central bit, which overlooks the dining area. So just things, obviously refit's not something you do every 5 minutes, but buying a radio is easy, or even just bringing it from another room. So make it somewhere you like. If you like music, put the music you have on your phone or whatever, buy a little speaker, just make it enjoyable, because actually if you're chopping vegetables to a rhythm, it's so bad. But if you perceive that cooking is a chore and it's a drag, and you're always going to be onto a loser, so just reframe it. And I know it takes time.
I think that's a great tip. It's about enjoying it.
Love your kitchen.
Yeah, I think it's great. Love your kitchen, love the environment you're in. And if you have an open, because we're lucky enough to have an open plan kitchen, so we can chop and prepare when the family around. So actually you can have a conversation and you're not like stuck in another room somewhere preparing for everyone, waiting for the food. It's actually, they can test it and try it, and you can have opinions on it and things like that. So it becomes a sort of communal area where you can share things and enjoy the food and the flavors and try different things and be inventive, because it's supposed to be, okay, we're fueling ourselves, but it's supposed to be fun there. We're supposed to have fun and enjoy it, because if it's a chore, as you say, you're not going to keep doing it. So thank you for that. That's a great tip. We talked a little about sugar, and you didn't really, we started on it, but we didn't carry on about why it's so bad for our bodies. We talked about how it causes the blood sugar levels to spike. We talked about the change in mood. Can you talk a little bit more about, I'm going to talk about the effects in the mouth and the teeth, but can you talk about the other negative effects?
Well, the effects in the body, of course, it predisposes us then to what would be a metabolic syndrome, leading into potentially a diabetes situation. So the statistics on diabetes are quite horrific now, and actually you don't have to be overweight or diabetic to have an issue with your metabolism, because you may have heard, James, of the phrase toffee, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. And what happens if you're eating a lot of very sugary food? Remember, you've got this rush into your bloodstream. Your body can't tolerate that. It has to get rid of it. So it releases a huge amount of insulin from your pancreas to move the sugar away. It may take it into the cells, may take it to the liver or muscles for storage, or what's it do with the excess? Straight to the liver and convert it to fat. So you can actually be building fat on the inside, and fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver, is now a very widely experienced condition by a lot of people, and it comes from eating either lots of very refined foods which break down to sugar, or eating sugary foods themselves, of which obviously you've got your drinks, cakes, sweets, chocolate, biscuits, the normal things you associate with sugar. And the more you eat, the more then fat you store around your middle. And that, it's always interesting, isn't it? So many people are following low-fat diets, yet they are fat storers themselves. So they're making saturated fat, storing it around their middle, not being aware that it's actually the carbohydrates that are driving that. So in terms of the damage into the body, you've got definitely a metabolic issue, and you don't have to be overweight to have that problem. And sometimes if you're a skinny mini, you've got to be a bit careful, because you can be under the illusion that you're perfectly fine, when in fact you're just managing your calorie intake enough to not put on weight, but you may not be healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How can you tell that? So it's always good to have a blood test, and we talk about the tests in the book to help you take a bit more control over what your blood markers may say and learning what they mean. So you'd be interested in your triglycerides, your good cholesterol, and also measurements you can do yourself is just keep an eye on your waist size and your blood pressure and your weight, obviously.
Yes, great tips there, Jenny.
Damage on the body is really about the issues of the blood sugar. Damage in the mind is very much about the addictive qualities. And, we know from studies that you're more likely to be depressed if you're on a lot of sugary foods.
Yeah.
One, because you tend not to be eating brain-building foods, so proteins and fats, because you tend to take your diet in one place. So you're not building the right neurotransmitters, but also because you've got this problem with the dopamine. And the trouble with any hormone or neurotransmitter is if you keep generating lots of it, your body tends to downregulate, so that you need more to get the same effect.
Yeah, which is definitely a problem at the moment. Great, brilliant, really, really good. And we talked about carbohydrates at the beginning, and people sort of lump all carbohydrates together. But as we know, there are good carbohydrates and bad carbohydrates. And part of the book is it's not a low carb movement, but people on the low carb program can use it, and diabetics can use it. But can you talk a little bit about carbohydrates and the good ones and the bad ones?
Yeah, so sugar would count as a really not a good one, just end of. Does that mean you can't ever have any sweetness? Well, a little bit of honey if you're well and healthy, just not all the time. I'm not averse to a bit of good quality cake, but you know what, be careful, because a lot of the cakes are made with horrid margarines and things like that, so as well as lots of sugar. So that's where, unless you can be sure of the quality, making your own using the Cake Sugar Cookbook might be a good idea.
Chocolate cake is my favourite.
Yeah, but that's okay every now and then.
Yeah.
Oh, James, I've lost my thread now.
Sorry, we're talking about good and bad carbs. Good
carbs and bad carbs. I got it. So, the sugary stuff, it's a bit like high days and holidays, and it's got to be quality. You don't want to eat something that's full of gunky margarines and huge amounts of sugar and things like that. So good quality. And then you've got the next one up would be the more refined products. And these are the products that personally I really don't recommend. So, be careful how much bread you're eating. Pasta, that sort of thing. Doesn't mean you can never have it. If you're metabolically healthy, you may tolerate some. What we find is middle-aged women probably don't do so well on those foods because we are prone to packing weight around the middle. So I personally don't have anything like that. I still have bread, but we have breads that don't use wheat and things like that. So substituting ground almonds. Psyllium is something that's a wonderful ingredient for making breads. And that's actually in the Caldesi book. So those refined ones are cereals. Cereals break down to sugar really, really quickly. So if you like the idea of pouring something in a bowl in the morning, then you might like to have a look at the Kick Sugar book for more the granola-y type recipes. Because again, the refined carbohydrate still breaks down very quickly and produces a lot of sugar in your system. The more refined the product, the more it breaks down. So off-the-shelf cereal is not such a good thing, but there's plenty of great breakfast ideas in the Kick Sugar book, so you could have a look at those. And then we get on to, whole grains. Again, it depends where you're sitting in terms of the metabolic health or weight. But then on to the vegetables and fruits. So everybody, I think, should be eating lots of vegetables. Personally, I think the adage of having half of your plate as veg is a very good one. You also want protein. You also want fat. And fruit, it depends on your choices. Personally, I tend to opt more for berries and apples. Apples are particularly good for the gut. Berries, I'll tell you a nice snack I did. I'm not a big snacker, but Sunday it's really hot. I don't know if you remember. And I blended some frozen berries, frozen raspberries, with some coconut milk from a tin, and it was delicious. So, it's what we're saying. It's not a punitive diet that we're saying here. There's lots and lots of lovely foods you can have. So, to summarise, sugar, insist on quality, keep it modest. Whole grains, refined grains, really try not to. Whole grains depends on where you are metabolically. Vegetables, load them up. So you've got quite a span there.
Yeah.
So
I love your plate, the way you've designed the plate, where you just think about, let's half the plate is going to be vegetables, and I can never eat too many vegetables, and then dividing the protein and the fats. And we talked a little bit earlier on before we started, but some of the people want to be interested in this low fat movement. I know that was something that really confused people a few years ago, was oh, I'm being healthy, I'm having low fat, but we know that it's just crammed full of sugar or sweeteners. So can you talk a little bit about the low fats and how people can look out on the labels for that?
Do you know, I was watching, it must have been over Christmas, Swallows and Amazons. It was set in the 1920s or something. And it really struck me because in the little shop, there was a big like slogan, and it was something like delicious creamy milk or something like that. And I just thought, haven't things changed? You think of the dairy aisle, low fat milk. Why? Skimmed milk. Why? These are not natural things that humans would have eaten. Can you imagine caveman sifting out all the cream? And no. Okay, so, you know, pick me up technically, the caveman wasn't necessarily having dairy, but you get my drift. Fats are very much part of a human diet, but the good natural fats. So by that, I'm talking about the fats that occur in foods. So dairy foods, if you tolerate them, not everybody does. So cheese and milk and cream, thumbs up to cream.
Yeah, I love my cream.
Strawberries
and cream, love it.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going off on a track. I was talking to one of my friends about her mother, doing a shopping for her mother, and she's saying she's just eaten all this ice cream. And I made the point, isn't it interesting? She's low fat, of course. Mm-hmm. And so isn't it interesting? We don't even look at the packet in terms of the ingredients and feel that ice cream's perfectly fine. Whereas I wouldn't choose that. I would go strawberries and cream every time. It's natural, it's tasty, it's way better for you.
Yeah. Well, in the book, we've got an ice cream that you can make with bananas and peanut butter and stuff, and you can make your own ice creams and actually flash freeze them. So, and you know what's in them.
But I tell you what, if you read some of the commercial ice cream packets, your jaw would drop. It's not much cream in some of them.
Any of the packets, really, because we're trying to get people over, especially with public PHC as well, is looking at no ingredients really. Ideally, we should be eating real food without ingredients, without labels. So we don't need to see what's in them because we know what's in them because they're the whole fruit. But if you are going to have it, look at the ingredients, see what you can have. We personally don't think about sweeteners. We think, if you're cutting back on sugar, sweeteners may be allowed as you cut through the process. But long term, you want to be having no sugar and no sweeteners. And if you have something sweet, have it with sugar, and at least you know what's in it, rather than all these artificial sweeteners. So, I mean, what's your take on artificial sweeteners?
Yeah, absolutely not keen on them. You know, that if people are looking to lose weight, the clinical evidence shows that they really don't help because they don't change your relationship with food. And but as a transition, they can be obviously useful. And I think you're right. So if you're making your own cake, we tend to put less sugar in than maybe a regular recipe. So because our taste buds change, I think that's something you talk quite a lot about. 14 days to change your taste buds is really it's exciting, isn't it? Because if you can just keep moving forwards and make some changes, it's not always going to be so hard.
It gets easier and easier, and you find, I mean, actually the research shows that if you're very strict on the added sugar and refined carbohydrates, that it only takes 6 days to retrain your palate. But we want to go for 14 days because people slip back really quickly. So if you can get to 14 days, you notice the flavors, the taste, the fats, the things you haven't tasted before for years because you've been filling them up with sweetness. I mean, the only reason the manufacturers put sugar in their things is really just to make them taste better, to hide bad flavors, to make the shelf life longer and get us addicted to it. There's no nutritional benefit for them putting sugar in. They're just lazy and it's cheap. So we're actually saying, well, actually get your flavors back, use herbs and spices, make a big difference. And you notice it very quickly, really. And you suddenly think, whoa. And when you have a piece of cake, which is fine if you know you're having sugar, it's occasional, great. But when you try and think, wow, this tastes so much sweeter. And so for some of my patients who've been on 5 or 6 Cokes a day, we need to take them down to maybe the Diet Cokes first and slowly wean them off. But then eventually it is just water. Or if they need fizzy water, maybe put some mint in them or lime or something else in just to make them more exciting. But we want them off those sort of things.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the drinks are a worry, aren't they? Because they are so addictive. In clinic, what I've found, I don't know if you've seen this, James, is another problem that people tend to report. They don't realise it at the time, but when they're on a lot of the fizzy drinks, is joint pain. That's something that's quite common in my experience as well. And that relieves very quickly, very often, when coming off of those drinks. So
I think the joint pain I've noticed, and also skin, people can say how their skin is different and feels sort of less greasy and more radiant very quickly off it. And then obviously taste as well. They're the three things that happen very quickly. And then obviously improved sleep, mood, less mood swings as well. Memory is better as well. So there's a lot of more clarity when you cut off the sugar as well. So we've talked a little bit about snacking earlier on, and I know ideally we should be just sticking to 2 or 3 meals a day and making sure that you feel satiated and full and enjoying your meals. But I know some people are on the go or got kids and things like that. So what do you recommend as snack foods, or if you needed a snack, what can people have that's quite simple?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. I mean, we do know that this whole idea of regular snacking is not how human bodies are designed, and it is a great way of selling more food, but if you do want to plan in some snacks, then just make it natural. So some slices of apple with peanut butter. Actually, peanut butter and yogurt's quite nice. You mentioned it within an ice cream. It is a bit of a superfood that can really improve flavors, and adding protein in as well. Some avocado maybe. Just think about something a bit more natural. If you are into baking, of course, you can make some wonderful things. So there are some lovely muffins in the book. I think you've said have them for breakfast, but they could also make a snack. So just try and think in advance about what you might be eating the next day. So think about tomorrow, today, because you'll have an idea then of what your commitments are. Obviously, at the moment, our diaries are fairly empty. That's obviously not usually the case. So just have an idea of where you are and plan ahead. And then if you do want to plan it in a snack, then have something that's good for you and substantial. So nuts are, say, quite people like as a snack because they tend to be quite filling. I can't remember, is there any crackers in the Kick Sugar book?
No, we haven't got any crackers in there now.
Yeah, in the Caldesi book, the first one, there's a lovely recipe called Scandi crackers, really easy to make, and with a bit of cheese on them. That's a lovely, lovely snack. But do try and think about not grazing through your day, because that's not such a good thing. Yeah. And if you are having a snack, just use it as an opportunity to feed and fuel your body in a really positive way. So the one I find really bizarre is this love of rice cakes. I find that really strange because they taste like cardboard, and they're just like loads of carbohydrates. So that wouldn't be a good choice for me. So yeah, there are other things that are much better for you, fuel you much better. Eggs are a good one to have as standby.
You talked about superfoods earlier on and foods. So can you sort of give the audience maybe your top 5 foods, or if people are asking what they'd stock their kitchen up with first, what would be the sort of the top 5 foods that you'd always have in your kitchen?
Okay. I'm kind of not in the sort of unusual superfoods sort of camp, really. I'm much more about more regular foods. Mm-hmm. But there are some, I guess I could think back to what did a stockpile when we were in lockdown. Apple cider vinegar, because you can make some fantastic sauces and dressings. And if you've got a dressing on a food, it really perks it up. So I would say having a really nice vinegar is lovely. And you can get the one with the mother in it, which is the fermentation. And that's very good for you as well from a gut health point of view. So in my kind of top 5, I would have that. I would have natural yogurt, because natural yogurt does make a nice snack. It makes a nice pudding. With either berries or stirring some chocolate in or something. And it can also make sauces as well, like if you're making a curry. So natural yogurt's very, very useful. Or would I go peanut butter or tahini? Tahini is sesame seeds. Yeah. Oh, I like both. Again, the most lovely dressings. So I had a brunch today. This is Caldesi inspired from the first cookbook. Broccoli, red pepper, a couple of hard-boiled eggs with the most beautiful tahini dressing over it. And it just is so delicious.
Wow,
Yeah,
sounds great.
maybe tahini. Yeah. So that's 3. Now, what else would I have? Maybe some raspberries, because again, they're great to pull out of the freezer. Fantastic for vitamin C. Actually, there's something that's even better for vitamin C, which again, I don't like being without. And because we're a bit more limited on our vegetables, not so easy for me to get red peppers. Love red peppers, and I use those a lot. So yeah, much more maybe ordinary than you might have been expecting.
Yeah. No, ordinary is good. We want things that people can get easily at their local supermarket without having to fuss and run around.
I've never really got into the, the more obscure type foods, really. I just love proper good.
Yeah. I think a lot of chefs and nutritionists and advisors put things out there and they end up trying to find the most obscure thing to make it sound like it's so exclusive and so great, and you have to buy this certain product that's only sold in this way from this place and that, and it ends up being so expensive. And actually the stuff that we can get in our local supermarket cooked properly is actually just as good for us and much easier and much more cost effective.
Yeah, and just enjoying good food, because my own experiences, I mentioned why I changed my diet, but what I perhaps didn't dwell on is the transformation in my own health I had. So 15 years ago, I'd been taking inhalers for asthma since I was 8 years old. I was taking quite a lot of painkillers, night nurse for sleep, because I'm just mad that I was doing that regularly. Antacids for indigestion. I thought this was just normal stuff that everybody did, but very quickly from changing my diet, I didn't need any of that medication. And my hay fever, as well as the asthma, was so bad. Very often I wouldn't be able to go out in the summer because I was just streaming. Whereas now, I wouldn't say I never get it, but I perhaps get 1 or 2 mild days a year. And that's nothing like the weeks and weeks of real horribleness that I used to suffer from, because my body's less inflamed. It's got good food that it can work and improve everything. So yeah, so there's so many benefits. And of course I don't need night nurse now because I sleep like a baby, because everything's in balance.
Well, that's what we're trying to tell people is about balance. It's about listening to our body, because something I fuel myself with may not work so well as it's something that you have as well. So it's about trying new things, listening to our body, try and eat real foods, and experimenting and enjoying it at the same time. Because if you're not enjoying the journey, what's the point? It's not supposed to be a diet. It's supposed to be a lifestyle. It's supposed to be something that you can sustain. I mean, the reason we do 14 days is to get people transitioning from where they were before and noticing the difference. But as you said, it's a long-term thing. We don't want the people keep doing a challenge. This is the way to see how you feel afterwards. So no, it's brilliant.
And it's great that you've got your Facebook group as well, because we do see people on there sharing how they're feeling. Yeah. I can recall some lovely photos of people putting up not just a little bit of weight loss, which most people quite like, but I think that the skin, because the skin is the one thing that shows if you haven't got good enough nutrition, because obviously your body's going to prioritize the internal organs. So if you've got a good glow in terms of your complexion, that actually says a lot about your overall health. So it is lovely to see people sharing that, and also sharing the types of things they're making, because there's no shortage of recipes. You can get recipes for everything, but actually the confidence and the motivation are the things that the book and the Facebook group can really help with. And just by sharing those examples, I think it's really, really positive.
No. We can all learn from each other and what works and what doesn't work. And people have alternatives. They're looking in their fridge and they don't have this, but what can I use instead? So yeah, the whole reason of this is a community to help make a big difference. And so thank you very much for being part of that community and helping these people. I've got a couple more quick questions before we have to finish up.
Okay.
Now, some people, they start it and then they feel like a craving halfway through and think, oh, I need something really sweet, or something happens, and then they go slightly off the wagon, and then they think they sort of beat themselves up and say, well, I got to day 12, but I can't do any more, and I've stopped now, so I might as well give up. But I'm trying to tell people that it's actually normal. I mean, even I Willpower, and there's a great book that I read called Willpower Won't Work. And even when I walk past something and I see a piece of cake on the side, it's instantly my brain is going, have that piece of cake, have that piece of cake. And I'm not even hungry, but it's there. So one of the tips I try and share with people is that, especially in your workplace, if you've got people who are eating a lot of not so good foods and sugary things and snacks, if they're out of sight, that makes a huge difference. If they're in a tin, then you're less likely to have this impulse. But all of us are human. Every now and then we'll maybe eat something that it tempts us and then we feel bad afterwards. Can you give some tips to people when if they've had something quite sugary and then 20 minutes, half an hour later, don't feel very good and then start beating themselves up? Two things really. What can they do to their body to maybe flush the sugar out? And two, how do they help themselves get through that and get back on track?
Yeah, absolutely. So flushing sugar out, I mean, once you've eaten it, you've eaten it. But I do think it is worth just reflecting on how you feel, because that's how we learn. And the more because at the moment we're describing a situation where our brain associates those foods with yumminess and feeling great. So we have to reprogram that. And, if you don't sleep very well, or if you get palpitations, or if you're feeling a bit sick, then actually process that and think about it, and not in a punishing sort of way, but just to acknowledge, and then think maybe how you could have done something better, another time. And I think then, just accept that, and the next day maybe think about how you're going to manage the next day. And back to this, think about tomorrow, today, is a very good way of making sure that you don't get caught short. Because very often when we have that binginess, it's because we didn't have a plan for what we're going to eat. It gets to 5 o'clock, we're feeling a bit and then someone puts a packet of Pringles in front of us, and then who knows what might happen. But if you've got a plan, you're going to be safer. And like you say, just ride it, just accept that these things will happen. It's not the end of the world. Process how you feel, because you're aiming to change that behaviour, and you want to feel better, which is why you're going to be on this programme anyway. So yeah, don't be hard on yourself, but give yourself the tools you need to succeed as well.
Brilliant advice. And what's the one question that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Oh, what is the one question?
Yes, what is the one? Is there one question that I should have asked you that I haven't asked you this afternoon?
Oh, I can't think. What is it?
I was just wondering whether there's anything that maybe other people ask and I haven't asked about.
Oh, so. I see what you mean. I thought you were teasing me there.
No. Your clients that you work with, because I know you work on a one-to-one basis with people to get them through various different issues. Is there a sort of common question, or that maybe it's how long it takes for it to stay in a habit of changing the diet?
Yeah, it's about that, and you've given some time frame there, and it's also about how do I practically incorporate this into my life, particularly if people are busy and have got a lot of demands in terms of work and family and all those sorts of things. So yes, just getting more clarity on that, and that's where I can help from a one-to-one point of view. Is a lot of the questions I ask are about how someone's set up at home. If they go to work, what is the capacity there for them to access food? Is there a canteen? Is there a Marks and Spencer's? And just understanding that, and then I can help them move forwards, really. So that becomes quite personalised. But I think just as a general thing, just think through your own day and, make plans, because you will feel better. So although it takes a bit more effort, it's got a reward.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jenny. It has been really, really, really insightful today. I know that you're going to help us obviously on our Facebook groups. If any people have questions, that they can just post it and ask to us, especially when they're going through the 14 days. But if somebody wants to work with you longer term, or wants to reach out to you with different collaborations, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Probably my website. It's very easy to remember. It's inspirednutrition.co.uk. So you can reach me through there, through an email link. And of course got yoga there as well, so if you fancy some online yoga, give me a shout. But I also do see people one-to-one, but that's obviously transitioning to online now, because we're socially distancing. Not forever though.
No, definitely not forever. So thank you so much, Jenny. I really hope that everyone listening has really picked up loads of nuggets. I picked loads up. I mean, one of the best ones that you had right at the beginning, actually, you gave us so much value at the beginning, but it was about loving your kitchen and finding an environment, making it into an environment that you love spending time in. So the music and just laying things out and just having it so it's somewhere that you've enjoyed is one of the best things I've heard. So thank you so much for that. And I look forward to chatting with you later.
Lovely, James. Lovely to speak with you as always. And really congratulations, not just on the Kick Sugar project, but also the Rewards project, because unfortunately our children are very much being controlled by some of these foods and drinks. And it's hard. So the more you can raise awareness, the better.
Thank you very much. Thank you.